Hello everybody, welcome to Owen Automotive. This is episode 3 of the Preservation E-Type. Now if you haven't seen the first 2 episodes, I highly encourage you to do so. This was an E-Type found after 45 years of dry storage here in my hometown with original paint, an original interior, and we are going to preserve as much of those fits and finishes as we can because we're tasked with a full mechanical restoration. So you can see the motor ready to go in down here. It's been completely rebuilt inside and cleaned up on the bottom for sure. But just to kind of show off how original the car was, we kept the original gold paint on the cylinder head. Isn't that amazing? Really nice contrast with those highly polished cam covers. Now we have everything to put this car back together, and I can't wait to do a comparison of the new and the old. And a lot of the hardware that originally fastened all the components onto the car, we've had plated. So you can see here some cadmium plating looking like automotive jewelry. So everything that's gonna go into this car is gonna look A1 concourse. And I even got some black oxide done. You can see the washers down in there. And that was, black oxide was used a lot on these early cars. Okay, well, let's have a look under the hood and see what we're working with. Gonna start today with a bit of a tour underneath the hood. In the last episode, we took out all the suspension, and I can't wait to put that all in with new silver cat. I think it's gonna look bloody brilliant. And you can see the original wiring harness here. I kind of taped it up and put these straps on and put it in place. It's the original wiring harness, 100%, and I'm gonna save it. Gonna rebuild all these 6RA relays as well. Lots of neat work to do. But I spent a long time cleaning this up. This is original. For instance, those straps down there are original. They've never been taken off. Same with these two right here. I'm just gonna preserve the integrity of the wiring harness. It's never been modified, so I'm just gonna use it. Now I've already put in one of the new pieces. That's this rock guard here for the radiator. I'll show you what it looked like just 2 weeks ago. So I've spent considerable time just to make sure that this is all correct. We got the painted kind of shell of it. The wire mesh itself is silver cat. I even used the original felt up top. This car was exceedingly original, and I just want to keep it that way. And this kind of shows the dividing line here. You can kind of see where old original meets new and restored. And that's what we're going to do underneath this hood. Everything that goes in here is going to look totally beautiful. And I think that'll be a neat contrast, a complete survivor. But when you get under the hood and you look into the mechanicals, you're going to see an absolutely amazing car. I think that's really neat. It's kind of the new kind of rat rod kind of style of restoration. But the first thing I want to do is the fuel tanks. Let's have a look at those. Old cars, rust and corrosion, they seem to go hand in hand. The original fuel tank for the 62 fixed TID is no different. Look at it in there. That's bloody awful. So the solution here is replacement. Luckily for us E-Type owners, we have a great supply of aftermarket parts. And here's a brand new fuel tank out of Taiwan. I just love it. Now there is slight detail differences, but I'm not gonna be that perturbed because this is all you can get. And this car's a runner, not a concourse queen. So one of the most immediately apparent differences is this strengthening rib. On the early car, it's just smooth. The vent just pokes up over here, whereas on the new one, for easier access, it's kicked over. And one of the other telltales here are these strengthening gussets that went on all the later tanks. Whereas if you look on the early tank, it has no gusset, so it must have had a problem with cracking around this area. And I'm really happy to put this more improved design in the car. So let's go see where it's headed. Here's the future home for that gas tank. Yeah, and with the fixed head Jaguar, the passengers are really in there with the fuel tank, so everything needs to be buttoned up. Now I'm gonna use this as another excuse to have a look at this absolutely amazing original interior. Everything's so crisp. I haven't even cleaned it yet, so with the detail, I think it'll come up even better. Now, anybody that knows if you have an E-Type with a rust-free belly pan, it's pretty rare, and this one is absolutely pristine in this area. I haven't even cleaned it up yet. If you look down in here, it looks like there was some protective oil or something, some sort of material scrubbed in there. I believe that's original from the factory, so I'm just gonna leave that there. Yeah, let's get ready to put this thing in. Okay, gotta be careful with this upholstery, it's original. It snaps pretty tight. So that comes out as one piece. And then this hatch here is supposed to be access to the fuel tank. Wow, it looks good in there. Okay, with that panel out, we can see more where the fuel tank nestles in here. There's more of this waxy rust protectant that's smeared all over the place. I actually saw some of this in the battery area as well. So in 1962 Jaguar were mitigating rust, that's for sure. There's a couple oddities here. One is for the fuel pump itself. It has wiring that goes all the way over here in this box. And if I carefully take this piece of plastic out, there's two connections in there anyways, which just bridge the power to the fuel pump right here. I'm not sure what it's all about, why it needs to be encapsulated. I don't know, I'm not quite sure. Now there's a drain tube in here. This is for the fuel filler area in case it gets water in it, drains down and out the bottom of the car. And then now the wiring here, you can see the original wiring. This is for the tail light, the way it's grounded right here, and the original cables are all attached here. If there's a problem with this, it's kind of tough because you have to take the whole fuel tank out to deal with it. And there's an interesting little clip here for the reverse light. Never seen that before, and that just sends wiring over here to the reverse light housing. So pretty interesting stuff. I'm gonna spend some time just cleaning up this dirt and debris, and then we can look at the fuel tank and all the hardware and put it in. So cleaned up this area in preparation for the fuel tank and had to draw the line somewhere. Where is it dirt and grime and where is it history and patina? It's hard to say, but I'm glad I did get in here because there was a little bit of surface corrosion. Got to get the rust converter on there and stop that rust in perpetuity. Now while I cleaned up this area, I did notice some details. Let me geek out here a little bit. One is down here where the well sticks through the body. There's this foam donut sort of thing. And I found out that actually it was glued to the bottom of the belly pan here, but I kind of prefer to put these things on the bottom of the fuel tank just to get it in the right location. Now up here, we'll call it the firewall for the rear suspension. There's the number 6 crayoned in there, see that? That's pretty unique detail. And also over here, there was a V crayoned as well. These are original factory markings, so kind of neat little discovery. And finally, my light down here, I found this tag on the back of the wiring harness. I think it was the identifier for the wiring harness. See the numbers there? It was hand drawn on the other side if somebody wants to recreate that for their restoration. Neat little detail. Okay, let's get this fuel tank in. Geeking out even more, here's all the original hardware for the fuel tank all plated up. Got the 3 special bolts with the point on them in black oxide like they should be. And the rest of the hardware all done and properly in black oxide. I just love this stuff. Okay, let's see how this goes. Now that the fuel tank's in, I can do the pump. Now these early E-Types have a submersible pump. Here's the original one out of the car. It's looking really bad, really petrified. It's amazing what fuel looks like after 40 years and what it does. And condensation as well, of course. That's why the top's rusted. So there's no choice but outright replacement here. Lucky for us, we have expert manufacturers in England that make custom boutique pieces just for E-Types, just like this. And here it is, a modern submersible pump, much more reliable than trying to re-and-re the old unit. Now, I forgot to get a pump gasket, so I could make one out of cork if I want to later if I'm in a pinch, but I'm gonna see if there's anything else I need to order on this car. And for now, there's lots more stuff to do, so let's start putting on the suspension. Let's do the front suspension. Look at all these pieces shining back at me, silver cadmium. These are blasted down to bare metal. They weren't pickled because you can't pickle high strength steel and it embrittles it. So it was sandblasted, then treated to a light cadmium plating process, and it just makes it all so beautiful. You can see a lot of the hardware here. I had it plated, and I had all the bees bolts black oxide, just giving everything a light coat of oil. It makes things a little messy, but it really ensures that these finishes hold up well. So the first thing I gotta do is put the upper ball joints and the upper control arms. So we'll get that done, get the whole assembly together and put it on the car. Here it is, right hand control arm assembly, all built up with the correct finishes and everything, looking like automotive jewelry. I just love it. Let's put it on the car. Just noting a couple things. I'm gonna put it in with some grade 8 hardware. Yeah, it's tempting to go grab the old black oxide hardware, but for these fulcrums, I'm using grade 8 hardware, and also the shims. So these are the same shims that were on the right-hand side when it came off, and they're going right back in where they belong. I had them black oxide treated, so they're ready to go. Let's put it on the car. Got the lower control arms here all plated up, looking beautiful. Gonna assemble them all together with the fulcrums, then we'll put them on the car. Got the new bushes here. And these fulcrums actually are, I think you can put them in either way, but this car had the part number towards the back, so that's why I'm putting it back on this car. And the rear fulcrums are getting grade 8 bolts for sure. Okay, let's see if we can get it in. This one's a bit of a fight. It's gonna go. Finished up assembling the brake box here. There's a lot going on with the bellows here that gives the brake assist to the front and rear master cylinders, and the clutch pedal is also integrated into these housings as well. Now, it was a real treat to assemble this. I'll show you, I had lots of CAD plating and black oxide plating, and I think it makes the job just look so beautiful when you see all the levers and whatnot all in black oxide and all of the finishes in cadmium as well. Now, these are all reproduction master cylinders, and they're slightly different than the original design. I'll show you what I mean. Here's the original Dunlop, and it's fed in from the top, and these ones are kind of fed in from the side. So I'm gonna have to make a decision here. Do I put a banjo fitting here, or do I modify the lines to accept these later style master cylinders? I have yet to really figure that out. Now, these little tags on here, these are actually off the original master cylinders. They were the tags that kind of identified what they were. And if you look closely here, we see the second month of 62. So it had all the original cylinders on there, which is kind of neat. I will keep these with the car, and if anybody in the future wants to rebuild them, they can do so. And yeah, there's a lot going on here. It's really tricky to get together. There's so much linkage down in here and arms, this adjustable eccentric kind of nut, and and then there's a castellated lock nut that's held on with a spring actually instead of a clevis pin. Pretty complicated stuff. There's lots going on here. I've done them before, but it's super nice to be able to do it to such a high level and have all this black oxide just looking like automotive jewelry. Okay, let's put it in the car. Whew. It's in. Yeah, really loving these assemblies going in, looking all fresh and clean. The original paint on those engine subframes, I think it's working out really well here. What do you guys think? The brake box here looking absolutely fantastic. Now over here on the bench, we're gonna continue on, have the uprights, and we have to fit the stub axles to the uprights. Now, one thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna test the taper. I'll show you how I do that. And I also have to fit the ball joint to the bottom. The ball joint's part of the hub assembly here, and it's put in with shims. And I'm geeking out here. I have the original bolts here in black oxide to put it together. Okay, it's always important to test the tapers out. This is even true of the ball joint tapers. I didn't show it on camera, but you always have to make sure that they're the same, because especially with ball joints, I've found that some have been not the right taper and slight discrepancies, and then it doesn't seat properly and you have a big safety issue. So I've got to get this bluing all over the place. Gives me a bit of a road map on how well the two materials are touching each other. Okay, let's see how it goes. There we go. So you can see clean contact all the way around there. That's brilliant. Okay, let's test the other side. See what it looks like here. Yeah, I was making contact for a good part of that taper. Hub assemblies are ready to put on the car. Just gonna have a few look at the few details here. Got this splash shield pressed on. Got the lower ball joint in. There's spacers in here. It has to be spaced correctly so it has the right amount of tension so it doesn't just lock up when you put this cap on. Now, all the hardware here is original. Got the original bees bolts there in black oxide. I even CAD plated the original lock tabs because they had a unique shape to them. I'm sure that the reproduction ones wouldn't. Now these were labeled completely before I took them apart. See the L and L, so I know this is going right back in the same position on the same side of the car. And yeah, so I think these are ready to go. You can see this is the only bees bolt on the car I found that was actually silver cad. All the rest were black oxide. And I'm gonna put the stub axles, we're gonna torque them in once these are attached to the car. So let's put them on. Okay, my friend George was kind enough to let me know the torque setting to torque in this stub axle into the hub. He looked at the Series 3 manual. It said 96 to 106 foot-pounds. It's got my big torque wrench here set at 100. Gonna give it a light tap, make sure it's seated. And let's torque it up. There you go, 100 foot-pounds. It's in. Okay, that stub axle is nicely in there. Now I need the weight of the engine to really get the torsion bars in the right position, so I'm gonna change course a bit. I have a whole bunch of stuff on the bench, I'll let you see that. Kind of got some catches and a little bit of electrical to do, so let's start to work on those systems. Yeah, I just love this original screen jet, original to the car. Just installing it here. I'll show you a picture of the back side of the motor here, the original sticker on there, and the date stamp, 2nd month of 62. Love original details like this. Yeah, definitely not restoring this piece. Just cleaning it up, putting it on the car. Okay, started the wiring harness restoration. What I did was I changed this connector and I cleaned all the connections. I put dielectric grease in here. And I think this is a great way to ensure that this wiper motor is going to work in perpetuity. Now this wiper motor is pretty complicated. It has a parking function. That's why we see 6 wires going in and out. These wires here were provided from the wiper motor from Lucas. That's why they're different than the PVC ones we see below here. Now you never see things this clean. Usually all these braided wires here from Lucas are just a mess of brown. There's no way to tell one from the other. And this one just cleaned up totally lovely. So what I did was I took it all apart. I put new connectors in there. It probably was fine with the old connector, but I just wanted to make sure we got a good working wiper motor in perpetuity. So I'm gonna hook this up, have the bracket here. It's kind of a funny bracket. This is the original bracket. The original screws are going back on. Now there was a bit of discussion in my last video about the wiring harness and replacing wiring harnesses. And I know in a lot of places you'll read that every car needs a new wiring harness and it's mandatory for restoration, but I totally disagree with that. most of the cars that come into Own Automotive here actually have their original wiring harness and they're functioning perfectly fine. In fact, when we start using replica switches and relays and the new stuff, that's when we tend to run into problems. So I try to reuse the old wherever I can. And if there's a problem with a component, I'll rip a switch or a gauge out of an old dashboard, because the new stuff, it isn't as good as the old stuff, to be honest. And this wiring harness is really nice. You see the PVC here, it's still pliable, it's not hard, it's not disintegrated. So this wiring harness is well worth saving. And I think when we have a look just at this one area here, we can tell that it's worth saving. All right, this is the first. I'm going to install the voltage regulator here. This looks like the original regulator, but it's one of the only electrical components that doesn't actually have a date stamp on it. Now, what's unusual about this is I'm going to be able to use the original factory labels, these paper labels that are still on this original wiring harness, and that takes out the guesswork completely. Now, I did clean off the tabs here, the connector tabs, put some dielectric grease on those, and I used a diamond file in these connectors as well and filled them full of grease. So we're going to have a nice, healthy connection for the next 50 years. Let's put this together. D to D. Indeed. Oh, nice. Okay, got that regulator in there. See, it's nice and neatly organized here, and had to remember both the ground cables that connect in behind here. The bracket's been CAD plated, so it gets a good ground contact for the unit. Now, if we keep moving down, we can see the original starter solenoid hiding in here. I cleaned all the contacts there as well. I've been underneath here in these studs and cleaned it all up. These are the original lead helmet battery connectors. Leaving those in there, gonna have to drill some holes in the top of my battery studs, which is kind of difficult. Lead doesn't drill very easy. And then finally, we have the 6RA relay. This is the original 6RA relay. I'll show you what it looks like inside. I gently pried the cap off and cleaned the contacts. In fact, I haven't even really disconnected these connections here because it's just a horn, and I think it's gonna work just fine. Now, I have a replica 6RA up here, and I've had nothing but trouble with these. I've had them stick on. Nothing's more annoying than a horn that's stuck on from one of these. And I've also had this style, for whatever reason, these replica ones blow fuses more frequently. So yeah, I just opt to clean the points in the original and stick it back on. It's the original one. We can see there it's dated the second week of 62. It's my kind of way of doing things. Just rebuild what you have. Next up is a steering rack here. Now, I took this apart, had a look inside. It was really good, no wear whatsoever. So what I did was I resealed it here at the pinion. There's a new O-ring in here, and I put some silicone in here to make sure it doesn't leak. Now, I've got the new boots on here. The uprated tie rod ends. I like using high quality tie rod ends, that's for sure. The steering shaft itself got a new little universal joint down in there. See that? That's a great thing to get changed out. It was pretty rusty. And last but not least, we have the steering rack mounts. Went with the high-end metalastic versions. Don't want to cheap out on things like that. Let's put it in the car. Not long ago, we actually were doing the opposite here. So all things need to get this steering in at the same time. Got that steering rack all buttoned up, really happy about that. There was a couple other things I had to do. I'll show you the housing up near the firewall that the shaft passes through. Wanted to clean that all up. It has the accelerator linkage in there as well. And also these safety bolts. The first immediate bolts here we see that are holding the rack aren't actually holding it. They actually just go through a very large hole, and they limit the movement of the rack, and they're also a safety item in case the rubber shears. And I see a lot of cars that shows that are missing these. I'll show you the passenger side. It's a little different. It kind of has like these long, full threaded bolts with some extra nuts on there. And it's important to get these set up correctly. You don't want them to lock down the steering. You still want that rubberized movement, but you need to make sure that they're there for safety. So yeah, just a public service announcement on that. Well, that does it for this video. I'm so happy to finally be assembling this car. It's such a rewarding process, and I'm so glad you guys are here for the journey to see what this car looks like and some of the original fits and finishes. Now I'll show you what this engine bay looked like in episode 1. It was a hot mess, and now it's so rewarding to finally see all the hard work cleaning and organizing. It seems like I'm a professional parts organizer. That really seems like my career path right now. But yeah, it's so rewarding to see all this stuff go back in piece by piece. And we still have a long way to go. There's a lot more components to put in this engine bay, to the point where you don't actually even really see the subframes at all. So yeah, we have a long way to go. I can't wait for you guys to follow along on this great journey, restoring this preservation class E-Type and putting it back on the road after 40 years. The E-Type is a real engineer's car. Underneath the hood of one of these things, everything is there for you to work on. It is a tight package, and sometimes that makes it hard to work on, but it's all there, and that's why I love these cars so much, is really there's nothing hiding. At least at the front here, you can get to it all, and it just looks totally amazing. All right, well, that does it for this episode. As always, if you have any tips, tricks, comments, or trade secrets, I love to hear from you guys in the comments below. Well, that's it. This video's over. Thanks for watching. See you later, everybody. Bye-bye.